In the glittering showrooms of 1955, Chevrolet unleashed a machine that looked more like a Motorama dream car than anything a practical American family would park in the driveway. Long, low, and dripping with chrome, the Chevrolet Nomad wagon turned heads the way a Corvette or Cadillac Eldorado might. People crowded dealer windows just to get a glimpse of its forward-leaning pillars and hardtop roofline. And yet, when the sales year closed, barely 8,500 had been built. To casual observers, it seemed like a disaster. Why would GM spend so much money designing something so stunning only to let it vanish after a single season? Tonight, we peel back the layers of this mystery, because the real story behind the 1955 Chevrolet Nomad isn't about failure at all. It's about a calculated marketing gamble, a corporate sleight of hand that reveals how far GM would go to dominate the American car market. By the time you reach the end, you'll see why this shocking truth changes everything you thought you knew about one of the most beautiful wagons ever created. 1. A secret strategy. Most cars of the era launched in the fall to capture a full 12 months of buying excitement. The Nomad, however, appeared fashionably late, February of 1955, halfway through the model year. To the public, it seemed like a scheduling quirk, but to insiders, it was a deliberate move. Chevrolet's marketing team knew that the newly restyled Bel Air sedans and hardtops were already smashing sales records. Dropping the Nomad mid-year allowed GM to create a second wave of publicity without cannibalizing its bread-and-butter models. Think of it as a surprise headline. Just when competitors thought they'd seen everything from Chevrolet, a glamorous two-door wagon with Corvette cues arrived to pull crowds back into showrooms. But this wasn't merely about timing. That limited run guaranteed scarcity. By introducing the Nomad late, GM ensured there would never be enough cars to meet the buzz it created, a classic tactic to heighten desire while keeping production costs controlled. 2. Styling straight from a dream. The Nomad wasn't born on an engineer's drafting table. It sprang from the fantasy world of GM's 1954 Motorama show cars. Designers Harley Earl and Claire McKitchen had wowed crowds with a Corvette-based wagon concept that seemed far too exotic for everyday life. Against all logic, Chevrolet's executives gave the green light to translate that fantasy into a family hauler. The result was unlike anything on the road, a rakish two-door roofline that mirrored a hardtop coupe, sweeping chrome headliner bows inside, and a grille so clean it could have been jewelry. Most wagons of the 1950s looked utilitarian, but the Nomad whispered speed and glamour. It was the kind of styling that lured sports car fans into a dealership and made them consider a station wagon, a trick no other brand could manage. This blend of utility and flash was part of GM's plan to prove that Chevrolet could be aspirational without stepping on Cadillac's toes. But behind the glitter, another purpose lurked. 3. A halo to sell the herd. Chevrolet's leadership knew the Nomad would never outsell the bread-and-butter sedans. That was never the point. It was a halo car, meant to draw shoppers who might ultimately drive away in a cheaper model. Think of it as bait. Buyers would flock to see the Nomad's breathtaking lines, only to find the dealer floor filled with Bel Airs, 210s, and 150s that shared its new V8 power and fresh styling at a lower price. The strategy worked. 1955 became a record-breaking year for Chevrolet, and the small number of Nomads on the street kept the talk alive. Scarcity made it more desirable, which in turn made the entire Chevrolet brand feel more fashionable. The wagon's low production was intentional, a calculated scarcity that boosted the company's image without draining its budget. 4. Under the skin, a wolf in wagon clothing. For all its glamour, the Nomad wasn't a fragile showpiece. Beneath the sleek sheet metal sat Chevrolet's brand new small block V8, a 265 cubic inch powerhouse that would become one of the most important engines in American history. This lightweight, high-revving motor transformed Chevrolets from mild family cars into genuine performance machines. Paired with the modern 12-volt electrical system and upgraded suspension, the Nomad offered driving manners far beyond the average wagon. It could cruise the new interstates at 80 miles an hour all day, carrying luggage and kids with sports car confidence. Owners quickly discovered they had something more than a pretty face. They had a hot rod hiding in plain sight. But even with all this capability, Chevrolet kept the brakes firmly on production. Why? The hidden limitation. The secret lay in manufacturing complexity. The Nomad's unique slanted B-pillars, wraparound rear glass, and ribbed roof demanded far more hand-fitting than the mass-produced sedans. Each body required specialized welding and trimming that slowed the assembly line and ate into profits. GM accountants knew they could never hit mainstream volume targets without ballooning costs, so they quietly capped production and let the car remain rare by design. The public never heard this at the time. To buyers, the Nomad seemed simply exclusive and hard to get. But internally, GM had made a clear choice. Keep it scarce, let it sparkle, and use its glow to sell millions of other Chevrolets. Price tag with a purpose. Chevrolet priced the Nomad at a level that surprised many loyal customers, hundreds of dollars more than a regular Bel Air wagon and edging towards Buick territory. This wasn't accidental. GM wanted the Nomad to feel aspirational, almost like a junior Cadillac, reinforcing the idea that Chevrolet could be glamorous while still being attainable. The higher sticker also acted as a natural filter, limiting demand so production never overwhelmed the tricky assembly process. Families who came in hoping for a Nomad often found themselves in a more affordable 210 or Bel Air instead, which was exactly what dealers hoped. The wagon's premium cost became part of the mystique, and for those who did sign the papers, it felt like joining a select club. That era of exclusivity remains today. Collectors still speak of the '55 Nomad as a car that instantly set its owners apart. 7. A star on the silver screen. Hollywood quickly noticed the Nomad's cinematic lines. Its low roof, wraparound glass, and glittering chrome photographed like few wagons before or since. In newsreels and promotional films, the car seemed to glide across the screen, embodying the optimism of mid-century America. Chevrolet leveraged this, feeding Nomads to studio lots and publicity events. Families who spotted one in a movie theater trailer or on a celebrity driveway couldn't help but dream. Yet, while the public saw glamour, insiders recognized another layer of strategy. Every time a Nomad appeared on screen, it subtly reinforced Chevrolet's reputation as the most stylish and therefore most desirable mainstream brand in the country. 8. Dealers in on the game. Dealerships understood the power of the Nomad as a traffic magnet. Sales managers placed the few they could get right at the front of the showroom, often roped off like a rare jewel. Some stores even charged an unofficial market adjustment, knowing enthusiasts would pay extra for immediate delivery. Customers who missed out were gently steered towards the plentiful sedans or hardtops. In effect, the Nomad became a live advertisement, a rolling billboard that lured people inside and kept conversations buzzing around town. Dealers loved it, even if they sold only one or two a year, because each Nomad helped them move dozens of other Chevrolets. The one-year sensation. By the close of 1955, Chevrolet had sold just 8,386 Nomads, tiny numbers compared to the hundreds of thousands of Bel Airs and 210 wagons. But that scarcity wasn't failure, it was by design. The company had successfully turned a low-production, high-impact vehicle into a marketing weapon. Executives could point to the buzz, the showroom traffic, and the record-breaking overall sales as proof the plan worked. To the public, it looked like a rare miscalculation, but internally, it was a masterstroke. The Nomad had fulfilled its mission as a halo car, and that explains why the 1955 version stands apart from later, more common iterations. But the story doesn't end there, because the next chapter reveals how this calculated exclusivity transformed the Nomad into a collectible icon decades later.
10. From showroom darling to rarity. As 1956 dawned, Chevrolet quietly refreshed the Nomad with new trim and a slightly taller roofline to simplify production. But something intangible had changed. The original 55 carried an almost concept car aura that later years never quite matched. Collectors today often call the first-year model the purest expression of Harley Earl's dream, sleek, delicate, and more handcrafted than the revisions that followed. Because only a few thousands rolled off the line, survivors quickly became scarce. Many wagons of the era lived hard lives, hauling kids, lumber, and camping gear. Few owners treated them as future classics. Decades later, when enthusiasts went hunting for pristine examples, they discovered just how few 55 Nomads had survived intact. That rarity would eventually send values soaring and cement the car's legend. 11. The custom culture embrace. During the 1960s and 70s, hot rodders and customizers began to recognize the Nomad's potential. Its low stance and pillarless profile begged for metallic paint and wide tires. In Southern California especially, the wagon became a favorite canvas for wild color fades, Frenched headlights, and chrome reverses. Ironically, this trend both preserved and endangered the breed. Many cars were saved from the crusher only to be heavily modified, while purists watched the number of original survivors dwindle. Yet every chopped or candy-painted Nomad kept the name alive, ensuring the 55 remained a fixture at car shows and in enthusiast magazines long before the mainstream collector market caught on. 13. Rising from obscurity. By the 1980s, a new generation of collectors began to view the first-year Nomad as more than just a cool wagon. It was a milestone of GM design and small-block V8 history. Auction prices crept upward. Restorers scoured junkyards for parts, often paying premium prices for unique trim pieces that fit only the 55. The very factors that had limited production, hand-fitted glass, special roof panels, one-year interior details, now made authentic restorations a challenge and a badge of honor. Owning a correct 55 Nomad became a statement, not just wealth, but dedication to one of the rarest mainstream Chevrolets ever built. 12. Modern-day Holy Grail. Today, the 1955 Nomad sits near the top of every Tri-5 Chevrolet wish list. A meticulously restored example can command six-figure bids, rivaling contemporary Corvettes. Collectors prize its delicate chrome ribs, wraparound rear glass, and the unmistakable stance that no later wagon quite captured. More than a pretty face, it represents the exact moment Chevrolet turned from a dependable family brand into a style leader, capable of challenging the prestige marks. The shocking truth is clear. The Nomad was never intended to be a mass-market wagon. It was a limited production halo car designed to dazzle, create scarcity, and ultimately elevate the entire Chevrolet nameplate. A marketing masterstroke that continues to pay dividends nearly 70 years later. 14. Engineering lessons that lingered. While the Nomad's production was intentionally limited, the innovations developed for it quietly shaped Chevrolet's future. Techniques for fitting complex curved glass and for reinforcing the low roof structure found their way into later GM models. Even the small-block V8's pairing with a stylish yet practical body set a template for future performance wagons and crossovers. In that sense, the 1955 Nomad served as a laboratory on wheels, an experimental blend of sport and utility long before sport wagon became a marketing term. The car proved Americans would pay extra for style and performance in a family vehicle, a lesson Detroit would revisit decades later with muscle wagons and high-end SUVs. 15. Stories from the lucky few. Surviving original owners recall how the Nomad turned ordinary errands into mini parades. Children waved, neighbors stopped to ask questions, and gas station attendants lingered for a second look. Many owners admit they bought the car not for its practicality, but for the way it made them feel. Glamorous, a little rebellious, and ahead of the curve. These first-hand memories reinforce the idea that Chevrolet created more than transportation. It sold an experience. And those emotional connections explain why people who once paid a premium for the car still speak of it with almost reverent affection today. 16. The collector's chase. Because so few were built, and many lived hard lives, hunting a true 55 Nomad today can be a challenge worthy of a detective novel. Rust often claims the complex rear glass frames, and those distinctive ribbed roof panels are nearly impossible to replicate. Serious buyers scour estate sales and barn finds, willing to pay top dollar for even a rough shell. Restoration shops specialize in the model, sometimes taking years to source authentic trim. Each rescued Nomad feels like a small victory against time, adding to the mystique that this car is far more than a pretty relic. 17. Cultural echoes. The Nomad continues to appear in television commercials, retro-themed diners, and even modern concept cars. Designers from various brands cite it as inspiration for today's crossover coupes and shooting brake wagons. Its blend of elegance and utility resonates with audiences who never lived through the 1950s, proving that the car's appeal is not just nostalgia, it's timeless design. Every new homage keeps the legend alive and introduces the shocking truth to another generation. Chevrolet once built a wagon so bold it rewrote the rules. 18. The shocking truth revealed. After exploring the history, the hidden strategy becomes undeniable. The 1955 Chevrolet Nomad was never a failed experiment or a sales misstep. It was a carefully calculated marketing weapon. GM purposely limited production, set a premium price, and released it mid-year to manufacture desire and draw customers into showrooms. It was a halo car, disguised as a family wagon, a bait piece that helped Chevrolet dominate the American market. The real surprise isn't that so few were sold, it's that this scarcity was exactly the point all along. 19. Closing reflection. Nearly 70 years later, the Nomad stands as a reminder that sometimes the rarest creations are not accidents, but master plans. What once seemed like a curious short-lived station wagon now reads as a blueprint for how to build excitement, elevate a brand, and create a legend. Every surviving 1955 Nomad tells that story silently, its chrome ribs catching the light as proof of Chevrolet's audacious gamble. And that is the truly shocking truth. A family wagon became one of the most brilliant pieces of automotive marketing ever executed, a rolling dream that still captures hearts and headlines long after its brief moment on the assembly line.